Hi guys, Dave here, back in the shed. I'm sorry it's been a month since I did a video for you, but I've had a couple of big projects on that just didn't lend themselves to video for me. I had a couple of elderly motorhomes that I had to do a lot of welding repairs on and block paving the back garden. So we've got those out of the way and now I can get back to doing some silly little videos for you. Today, got a little project on sorting out this dial caliper. I've had it for about 10 years or so, and unfortunately about a month or so I dropped it and damaged the rack that drives the dial. Let's have a closer look and I'll explain what we're going to do. Right, so this is the offending item. This is a dial caliper. A lot of people refer to all calipers like this as vernier calipers when they're not. A true vernier caliper has a vernier scale here instead of the dial, which allows you to read tenths of a millimetre or fractions of an inch if you're using an imperial one. I prefer millimetres myself. I find them much easier to work with most of the time. There's three main types of caliper. You've got your vernier calipers, you've got a dial caliper, or you can have a digital caliper. I've had a couple of digital calipers and both of them failed in a ridiculously short time. So this one has always worked perfectly up until the point when I dropped it. And what's happened is there's a rack here that drives the dial, and there, I don't know whether you can see that and hear it, but just there are a couple of teeth, I think, that have been damaged in the rack, and what's happening is it's jumping. It goes tight and then jumps. The scale reads perfectly well, but it jumps, and there again. So what I'm going to do is strip it down and see if we can get the rack out of it and see if we can fettle up the teeth. This is only a cheap unit. It's an Amtech brand. Really cheap, but it's always done the job. If it was an expensive Toyo or something like that, I'd be really annoyed with myself for dropping it. So the first thing I need to do is unscrew this piece, which on the back is a plastic spring unit as a buffer to stop the head coming off the end. Pop that there, and on the other side of that is this little bridge that bridges over the depth tail. And I also need to unscrew the depth tail from the main head. One problem for me with jobs like this is these screws are tiny and I've got big number 10 coke shovel hands, and as my wife often tells me, sausage fingers, which doesn't help with doing fiddly detail stuff like this. Right, so that's the tail depth off. On the top here, those two little grub screws set in there hold and adjust the pressure on a spring plate that lives in there, and with that thumb screw it allows you to clamp it in place. So if we take that out, now if you look carefully you might just see, if I get it in the camera shot, you might just see that is very slightly bent. It is supposed to be, that's how it works as a spring. And now we should be able to slide the head off the end. Now I don't know how that rack is attached to the main body. I'm guessing it's glued. I can't see any signs of heat having been applied to it, so I doubt if it's silver soldered or brazed, and there's no screws on the back or on the top edge that could hold it. So I'm assuming it's glued. So I'll take a nice sharp little knife, go to this edge, yeah, that knife's gone in behind there and it's lifting away quite nicely. What I don't want to do is bend it, so we need to very gently ease that away as I go along its length. Yeah, that's coming away quite nicely. As I get to the little dabs of where the glue has been applied, I can feel the resistance, and then I feel it give. And there we are. So yeah, it's been glued on. Don't know what kind of glue they've used. What I shall have to do is scrape out the remnants of old glue in there and off the back of there, and then find some similar type of glue to glue it back in. Right. And yes, I think I can see the damaged teeth. Let's have a look at it under a magnifier and see if we can see what's going on. Yeah. Right. Let's see if we can get a camera shot of that. Right, I've managed to get some sort of a position where we can get close in on it, and just there you can see the damaged tooth. Can't see any evidence of any others particularly, but there is this glue on the back of it which won't be helping, and there is some grot in the teeth of the rack. So a good clean, remove the glue, and a bit of a fettle on those couple of teeth there. Looks like it's actually chipped the top off one of the teeth and bent it slightly. Hopefully it hasn't damaged the gear on the inside of the dial. First thing I'm going to do is try and get rid of some of this glue, which I'm going to use a diamond foil just to gently rub it away, supporting the area that I'm working on so that I don't bend the rack. That might be a bit too fine actually, that diamond foil. Let's try an ordinary high-speed steel file. better. That's moving it now. Don't know what kind of glue this is, but it's quite hard, so it might be some sort of an epoxy adhesive, like araldite, or something of that ilk. Right. I'll try a bit of abrasive mesh to clean it up, because this won't damage the hardened stainless steel surface of the rack. I'll just be able to clean all that nasty glue off. This is going to take a few minutes, so I'll carry on and I'll come back to you when I've got this cleaned up and we can start looking at tidying up the teeth. Alright, that's got that pretty well cleaned up. Got just about all the traces of glue off it. Before I have a look at the rack itself, I'll clean some of the glue off the body. I'm using a 3-corner small file because it's got a radiused end, which means that I can get in and just gently run it along the body slide. Yeah, that's come up pretty well. Right, back to the rack. If I can find that damaged tooth again. There it is. We're looking at it, and if I look through a magnifying glass, quite a few of the teeth have got quite a bit of crud embedded in them. So I think what we need to do is give that a clean, probably just by scraping it through with the Stanley knife blade. One of my problems here with this is I don't think I've got a file fine enough to get into those teeth. Right, now it's all thoroughly cleaned and I can see the damaged tooth there, and it's really very, very tiny damage. It's the edge of the tooth has been bent over slightly. Unfortunately, I don't really have a very fine file. These needle files I've got are quite coarse actually, as needle files go, but what I'll try is just to very gently just rub that across it and over a couple of them, putting no pressure at all on, literally just the weight of the file. And then there's this big magnifying glass I've got, and see if that's improved it at all. That does look better. One of the beauties of this magnifying glass is it's got a large magnifying area, and it's also got a smaller area there that's a very high magnification, so I can get quite close in with that. And it's also got LEDs in the bottom to light up what you're looking at, which is very handy. They all look quite good. I take that out of the vise, and then if I gently insert that into there, engage it with the gear, and that feels quite smooth. That feels pretty good. Might just have succeeded with that, so I'll finish cleaning things up and then I can put it back together and we'll give it a try. Alright, so I suppose the first thing I've got to figure out is how to reattach that. And I think my only real option at this point is a couple of drops of super glue. But I'm going to see if we can put it back together. I can put it back together first and have that loose and just slot it in. Just a bit of grop needs cleaning off there. I can't see what holds the dial onto the head here, so I'm guessing it's either going to be glued on, or there's probably a couple of screws inside the dial head, which would mean taking the face off, and I'm not going to bother with that. So we'll slot that back onto there. Like so. Slide that little spring plate back in. Now, don't know if you can see that. There's a little notch in that spring plate. That should locate under the thumb screw. It's very thin, very fiddly, and my hands are quite cold because it's not very warm out here in the shed today. Just gently tighten the adjusting screws, just so they put enough pressure on it to keep it in place, and that should then slide. And I've got that wrong because the spring has come out of the end. If there's any instrument mechanics watching this, I'm sorry for the mucky job I'm making of it, but also if there's any instrument mechanics watching this, you ought to go and watch somebody who knows what they're doing. Well, I've got to line things up to get the dial indicator to read 0 when they're fully closed, but what I can say is that moves beautifully now. Oh, I've got a click there. I've got a bad tooth, or is that just because that rack isn't fastened in place yet? Yeah, it's just because the rack isn't fastened in place. Right. I think it's time for a spot of super glue. Or the Gorilla Glue brand equivalent. Just put a few little spots. If it'll take, it shouldn't take very much. Need to line the end of the rack up to the end of the body. Lay that in and squeeze it in position. I suppose being cold is going to help the glue cure. Currently reading about 8 degrees in here, which is a little fresh on the fingertips. That seems to have got it. Right. Now the ideal situation is when the jaws are fully closed, that needle should be at the 12 o'clock 0 position. So what I need to do is just disengage it from the rack. Ooh, I think I've got it. Right. I need to hold that in position with my thumb so I don't lose that. So unscrew the adjusters, unscrew the thumb screw, keep some pressure on that to keep it in place. Slide the little spring in. Biscuit too tight. That's really quite nice. With the jaws fully closed, I'm about 0.01 out on that, but you can rotate the dial to 0. So the fact that it's not truly at 12 o'clock isn't that critical. I can live with that. Right, we can put the depth slider back on. bridge plate at this back end. Probably need to put the woofer on first. Get those screws into place. The slots in those screws is so fine that even my finest screwdriver is a little bit too thick for them. Not helped by the fact that it's magnetic and it's picked up a bit of swarf. That's got it. And the other one. Yep. Right, there we go. I don't know quite what's happened there, but I've just worked it along and back, and now with the jaws fully closed, the needle is fully at 12 o'clock. That's absolutely perfect. Smashing, lovely job. Just a tweak on those adjusters. That worked beautifully. I'm going to call that a job well done. I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you next time.